Well, good afternoon, everyone. Let's get today's AMA section started. OSL AMA offers a front row seat to Asia's institutional crypto evolution. From policy shift to market moves, we deliver exclusive insights straight from the decision makers shaping the industry. It's where institutions get the alpha before the headlines. In case you miss it, the Hong Kong FSC has just approved staking services under its regulated crypto regime. This is a huge moment not just for Hong Kong, but for the global digital asset industry. And we are proud to say OSL is the first institutions ready to lead this new chapter. Even more exciting, we are announcing our strategic partnership with Kiln, one of the world's leading Ethereum staking infrastructure providers. Together, we are bringing enterprise-grade staking to Asia's institutional investors. So, what exactly did FSC approve? What does staking mean for institutions? And why should you care right now? Stay with us, we are breaking it all down. Joining us today is someone who doesn't just follow the trends, they help to shape them. Let's give 1 minute for our guests to introduce themselves and the projects they have been working on. Why don't we start with Colin?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for a great intro and having me here tonight. Um, for me, yeah, who am I and what am I doing here? Right? You might think, what is this Belgian guy doing here on a call with OSL? Well, I'm originally from Belgium. I lived and work out of Amsterdam for the 5 years prior to moving to Singapore about 1 year ago. I've been at Kiln for about 3 years and been able to work with the company from a small startup to now being a leader in the industry. So it's been quite an adventure, and I'm super happy to be part of this conversation and having helped OSL being the first registered licensed staking provider in the APAC region. A little bit of background. So in my 3 years at Kiln, I moved around the globe and I've set up the APAC office recently in Singapore. Unfortunately, not Hong Kong. That's a story maybe for another another session. It could have gone either way, but we do have people on the ground in Hong Kong, and so most people will know Kiln as a staking company. We don't do just staking. We see ourselves really as a rewards platform, and we work with institutions and enterprises all around the world to help them and their clients maximize the returns on their digital assets, particularly when staking assets such as Ethereum, Solana, but also monetizing stablecoins, for example, through DeFi solutions.
So it's great to have you here, Colin. And next, let's welcome Gary Chu, our Managing Director.
Hey, thank you, Lucy, and thanks, Colin. Really great to talk to everyone here. I've been with OSL since 2019, so it's been 6 very interesting years in the crypto space. 4 of these 6 years, OSL has been operating as a licensed platform in Hong Kong. In fact, we were the first to do so. And I'm not a crypto native, so to speak. I didn't enter regulated crypto as a crypto native looking for regulation. I started in crypto because we wanted to be a builder of regulated crypto ecosystems, and that was because we saw that as the future of crypto. And you know what? Actually, being on this AMA today with Colin, being able to work with people from all around the world in the crypto ecosystem is precisely what makes such a great ecosystem. We can be doing a project with like-minded people, like-minded colleagues and friends from all over the world, and build something really great, and bring it to Hong Kong. So what do you know? 6 years later, we see the trend as being as strong as ever. So the introduction of staking into the regulated ecosystem in Hong Kong, I think, is another one of these really enormous and important milestones for the sector in Hong Kong. And so really great to be talking to everyone here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gary. It's great to talk to a regulatory OG. So, and next up, let's invite Hoy.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well, Hoy. Please go on.
Thanks so much, Dorothy. It's good to be here today to speak to you, with like-minded Colin, Gary. So I'm head of institutional product in OSL. So I've joined almost a year now in OSL, mainly managing trading infrastructures, different product lines, mainly focusing on institutional clients. I haven't joined OSL for too long, but actually my journey started quite early, a few years back. And during my time in the crypto space, I of course, and met with Colin on different projects, and I'm very delighted and happy to introduce Colin into Hong Kong, in particular in the innovation funds for staking. And yeah, I'm looking forward and excited about this AMA.
Thank you, Hoy. The next few questions will be for our guest from Kiln. Colin, you have been with Kin for over 3 years now, which in crypto terms is practically a decade. In that time, the industry transformed dramatically. Back then, we did not even have the Bitcoin ETF or Ether ETF. From your point of view, what have been the most significant shift of trends you have witnessed across the ecosystem over the past few years?
Yeah, for sure. 3 or 4 years in crypto is definitely feels like a lifetime, and you can definitely see it in the way you lose hair or your hair turns grayer every few months. But that's that's what we're all in for, right? I don't think anyone chooses a crypto or Web3 career path thinking it's going to be easy. It's going up and down all the time. Obviously, my view on the last 3 4 years might be a bit myopic, because my focus has been fully on staking, right? So I won't talk about anything I'm not like knowledgeable about. So my view specifically on staking is that within the last 3 years we did have a lot of innovation and big things happening in the industry as a whole. If we wind back the clock about 2.5 to 3 years ago, the biggest shift was when Ethereum went from proof of work to proof of stake. So maybe for those who are not familiar about staking, staking is one of the mechanisms to secure a blockchain. And what that does is basically holders of a certain token, for example, Ethereum or Solana, they can stake, or in other terms, lock their token for a certain period of time. And in return for offering that lockup, they secure the network. It becomes harder to corrupt and to mislead. And in return, they get rewards for that, typically in the form of interest in the same token. So you could see it a bit as blockchain security, and you get compensated like an internet bond. So that's what we've been doing. And Ethereum used to be a proof of work blockchain, just as much as Bitcoin is a proof of work blockchain. And they made the transition to proof of stake about 2.5 years ago. This was a major project, major technical lift, and ultimately everything went really smoothly. And this gave a lot of investors and holders confidence on how to earn more rewards by holding and contributing to the Ethereum ecosystem outside of the miners previously. The power actually and the rewards shifted to holders and believers in the ecosystem. So that was one big thing that happened. If we then look at what that also enabled, is, for example, the advent of liquid staking. Some of the pioneers in that space would be Lido, for example, where instead of just staking your Ethereum, you could get another token in return. You could then use that in DeFi, again, improving the liquidity, but also improving yields by using DeFi infrastructure. Also a game changer in general, and a really good advancement and capital efficiency for the industry. And then lately, we've seen the arrival of restaking. This happened about like a year or so ago. Many people in the industry will know companies like Eigenlayer, now recently Symbiotic, where you can actually restake. I won't go into the technicalities of that, but it's another mechanism of using the same the same infrastructure and the same security from staking, by applying that to other tokens and other chains to actually mutualize resources and making it easier to bootstrap a project on a blockchain. So pretty cool, and is really making that innovation cycle shorter and shorter for people building applications on blockchains. And then lastly, I would say in the staking space, the talk of the town, and this could have been a joke maybe 3 years ago when, or 3-4 years ago when I started at Kiln. You can actually now also stake Bitcoin. Um, Again, Bitcoin is a proof of work asset, so it would not be associated with staking at all. But now this is possible through things like Babylon and other protocols that actually allow you to lock your Bitcoin in a similar mechanism and then earn a reward for securing and locking your Bitcoin up. So these, I would say, would be four major trends and changes in just a time span of 3 years. So I'm curious what my hair will look like in the next 3 years and what other innovations we will see appear in the future.
Thanks so much, Colin. I really like the metaphor that the staking is like an internet born. And I would like to ask you, for those of our audiences who may be new to Kin, could you give us a quick overview of what the company does and what your mission is and how you're delivering on that mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So most of the people that will know Kiln, if you're a bit in the Web3 crypto industry, will know us from staking, right? So we're a global leader in staking. That means that we validate transactions on different blockchains, and we do that typically on behalf of other holders and institutions. We are a pure B2B player, so we see ourselves not just as a staking company, but more as an enterprise solutions and product development company, meaning that staking is just the base infrastructure of what we provide on a technical level, but we provide way more services that are valuable for enterprises in the likes of wallets, custodians like OSL, exchanges like crypto.com, and other crypto based companies to actually be able to offer staking and other earn opportunities to their clients. And that comes in the form of reporting, that comes in the form of API integration, that comes in the forms of UI elements. So we really want to make earning yield on your assets easy. That for us is our motto or our vision, and we think that everyone in the world, institutions to retail, will own some type of crypto in some type of form in the near future, and we're there to help them make a return or rewards on that, whether that's assets such as Ethereum and Solana, but could also be more and more in the RWA, real world assets, or even stable coins. We're really there to provide the future of finance through yield and staking and rewards opportunities for clients and their clients.
This is very interesting, Colin, and we would like to understand more. What types of typical clients do you work with, other than exchange, where you just mentioned, and what kind of institutions or partners can especially benefit most from your services?
Yeah, absolutely, sure. So one big segment is what I mentioned before would be the exchanges, right? This is where a lot of retail staking and retail earn opportunities arise from. But that's not the only one. So, for example, we work very closely with custodians all around the world, and super happy to be able to collaborate with OSL on that front. And this also leads us to other type of institutions that typically collaborate with custodians to offer their products. Those would be ETP, ETF issuers. These are also clients that we work very closely with, typically in combination with a custodian like OSL. And then lastly, we work with fintechs and wallets. For example, Trust Wallet or MetaMask. These are all institutions that we work also very closely with. And the reason we're able to service all of these clients who on paper are very different, right? A retail exchange is very different from an ETF issuer, is very different from a custody provider. The reason we're able to service these is because we're very product oriented and we have a broad range of solutions that can help them build their own products internally to serve their clients with things like staking, earning, yield, and other reward programs. So that's the core of our business, and that's why we're able to basically help all these different types of institutions.
Awesome. And I think a lot of our audiences are also retail crypto holders. So, like, for example, myself is a retail crypto holder, and I'm familiar with staking through platforms like Lido, you just mentioned, or like major exchange like Coinbase, Binance, Kraken, or Swissberg in Europe. And like, who hold a significant share of stake ETH. And how does Kiln's offering stand apart from this more retail-focused solution? Why did you choose B2B as a focus rather than retail focus?
Yeah, it's a good question. And those worlds are a bit interconnected, I would say. I can't give you all the names because we definitely have NDAs with some of our clients, but many use cases are online on our website, kiln.fi. For example, on some certain exchanges, even with the large wallets like Ledger, the staking functionality that you as a retail user are engaging with there can or will be Kiln in the backend. And some, like Ledger, will decide to present Kiln visibly in their UI. Other exchanges and platform will do what we call a white label solution, and they will slap their own UI design on top of it. But I would say many of the ones that you mentioned before, and all the ones that you can find on our website, and we can talk about many more, will use Kiln as their service provider. Others will use in-house technology, but typically the ones that want to go to market very fast, and the ones that are more demanding in terms of reporting, performance, uptime, and like SLAs, they will work with company like Kiln to take all that worry away and be able to launch products way faster.
That's great. I think that linked to my next question. Why is staking infrastructure very critical for institution today? I think you start to explain on it, and I'm wondering if you can elaborate on this point a little bit further for our audiences.
Sure. So, going back to like how staking works, right? So, in essence, you lock your certain asset, your token, you get rewards back because you're securing the network. The concept of blockchains is that you have a decentralized infrastructure that is more resilient and more accessible to a broader audience, right? More people, more apps, more access, more decentralization, less frugality or fragility in the system. So validators and stakers play a core role in that ecosystem, right? Without validators, no transaction will come. There's basically no infrastructure. So you can see validators as a lot of computers that are running to keep a network, almost like a spider web of validators up and running. That's what you need to imagine as a blockchain. And as a validator, as a staking company, we run that infrastructure, make sure it's up and running all the time, so that the blockchain keeps validating new transactions and no data or assets are being lost. So it's a very core infrastructure, a bit similar to like data centers and Google Cloud and Amazon are for the internet and web apps. So are validators for blockchain-based applications.
Okay, cool. And I think our audiences also see the trends that Bitcoin and Ether ETF are gaining tractions. And I'm wondering, how do you view the correlation between the two? And more specifically, what kind of institutional interest are you seeing around Ether staking comparing to the momentum behind BTC ETF products? I asked this question because I noticed Kiln has a recent panel host in New York, and like another team members of yours are interviewing different fund, and like they basically explain currently at the industry there is more traction towards the Bitcoin ETF, while the Ether ETF is difficult to understand for a lot of TradFi institutions because it's two different concepts. Like the Bitcoin ETF is more like the digital gold ETF, while the Ether ETF is more like open source app. So like the investors are still having difficulties getting around that. And I wonder if that is still the case you see right now, or like there is different adaptation mode in different places in the world. I would love to hear your point of view.
Sure. So this will be a bit of my personal point of view. This is definitely not Kiln's. Um, I think in general we see that ETFs have been successful, right? Whatever the mainstream media wants to make you believe, in general, if you look at the in and the outflows, there's been significantly more inflows than outflows. What that typically tends to say, and this again is my personal opinion, is that institutional investors, those that don't want to or can't handle crypto, let's say natively, because they don't want to mess with a wallet infrastructure, or they actually maybe not allowed regulatory wise to hold any crypto. These ETF products are great, right? And they can hold Bitcoin, they can hold Ethereum. And it makes sense in a way that Bitcoin ETFs have been more successful than Ethereum ETFs. The reason being that in a normal state, on Ethereum, you should be able to stake Ethereum, but Ethereum ETFs were not staked. That means that if you buy an Ethereum ETF, which 99% of the current ETFs are non-staked ETFs, you're losing out on 3-4% yield per year. So if you're a smart, savvy investor, you're not going to buy an Ethereum ETF that is non-staked, because you're leaving 3-4% yield on the table, right? So institutional investors are not stupid, so they might as well not do it. It's a different story for Bitcoin, because typically Bitcoin is a proof of work asset. There's no staking, there's no yield on Bitcoin. So if you buy a Bitcoin via an ETF or you buy a Bitcoin flat, there's still no yield. So ultimately that makes no difference. Now, I think and I hope that skew will be changing as more and more Ethereum ETFs in particular offer staking underneath. Then I think it becomes a different story, because you do get the yield, and you do get, let's say, the institutional format of Ethereum plus the staking yield. So I'm hoping that skew that we're seeing between the volume in Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF will slowly diminish over time, as we see investors realizing that there's also staked Ethereum ETFs, and so that kind of reduces the arbitrage, and then they can go for the financial product with the yield.
Thank you, Colin, for your breakdown. That's very insightful. The next few questions will be for Gary, our Managing Director and Head of Regulatory Affairs. So, Gary, you know that the Hong Kong FSC has taken several important steps in shaping the virtual asset landscape over the past 2 years. From your perspective, how has the regulatory regime evolved in the past 24 months, and what impact has that on the industry and on platforms like OSL? Would love to have your point of view, Gary.
Sure. I guess just riding on what Colin mentioned about the general, I think general success of the ETF story. If we sort of look from sort of macro lenses perspective, if you compare sort of the accessibility of crypto to retail and institutional investors, let's call it 5 years ago, crypto basically was out of reach for most institutional players. And this is not just the end investors, but it's also intermediaries or service providers like brokers who just want to be able to connect to crypto and to allow their clients any form of access to crypto. So 5 years ago, that was out of the question. It was not available. And if we sort of fast forward back to the present time, and you sort of look across the landscape, for end investors or professional investors or institutions, you can now pick from going direct. So, i.e., you can find a regulated platform such as OSL, and you can directly open an account to buy or sell, or you can potentially go indirect, i.e., potentially go to some of the other financial institutions such as brokerage firms. Sorry, there's another. Oh, okay. So, sorry, just heard another microphone. Yeah, so you can go direct or you can go indirect, i.e., other financial institutions who also provide access through their back end connection to crypto exchanges. So, for example, some brokers in Hong Kong, I think now the number is around 14 to 15 different brokers in Hong Kong are connected to OSL. So that means their clients can access crypto through them. So that would be an indirect route. Or you can go even more indirect and buy a financial product like an ETF, which is directly which directly tracks the performance of crypto. So, for example, the Bitcoin ETF or the Ether ETFs. So these are actually financial products. They are fund structures listed on a stock exchange and settled in the usual way, bought and sold through the usual ways. And the reason why that's an important point is the choices available to investors now, compared to 5 years ago, is a very, very different world. So what makes the staking question important is if we do a financial product or if we provide investors with access to crypto in a certain way, but we take away some of the benefits, then that makes that particular channel or that particular product slightly less attractive. And that's not a smart way to do a financial product. I mean, I've come from a TradFi background. I mean, if you're doing an access product and you take away some of the benefits of the access product, you're not going to do very well at it. So that's why I think allowing the ETFs, in this instance, particularly the Ether ETFs, to benefit from staking is such an important factor for the success of those ETFs generally. It's to ensure that if investors choose that particular channel, and we want to encourage them to do that, we want to make sure that they don't get an inferior product. I mean, in simple terms, that's really how we should look at that. So Lucy, to come back to your question of how much has been done to enable things like that, it's actually quite a lot of work have happened in the background. So the first batch of ETFs to hit the market in Hong Kong, or for that matter in the US, effectively meant cooperation between different financial regulators. So in the case of Hong Kong, all the way from banking regulators to securities regulators, so that both the Hong Kong MA and the SFC had to be on board in order to make it happen, because with a product like ETF listed on the Hong Kong exchange, that is something that needs all the different service providers, such as banks who are typically, or the banking groups who are typically performing the role of master custodians and fund administrators, to be able to support the spot product, and for the Hong Kong financial regulators to actually give the nod to the Hong Kong Stock Exchange to actually list a crypto product, to all the brokers who have to act as participating dealers. All of these things have to line up in order for even a single simple spot ETF to happen. And in the case of the Hong Kong products that also allow in-kind subscription and redemption, in fact, actually, even more work has to go in if we compare them against, for example, the US ETFs that do not allow that feature. And that feature, we did actually share with a lot of our investors and audience last year. That feature is actually quite an important quite an important milestone as well. It effectively makes it more seamless for crypto investors to potentially come in and out of the Web3 space, to interchange their Web3 wealth with securities instruments that actually track their crypto wealth. So a Bitcoin holder who potentially swaps their Bitcoin holdings with a Bitcoin ETF is effectively holding a very similar instrument through to two different very different mediums. So I think the long and short of all this is the more we make the Web3 and TradFi interconnected, then the more choices we are giving to the investors to actually hold their wealth or to conduct their investments through the channel that makes the most sense to them. And this is and I think this is what we OSL as a regulated crypto player in this space is working towards. Is to make it as accessible as possible to as many different people of different walks of life, and they can pick and choose whichever channel works best for them.
Thank you, Gary. I would like to dive deeper on this topic. And how would you evaluate the current regulatory framework from the FSC? Because we know we have 2 years ago the VATP guideline, and now there is more guideline on stablecoin and on staking. And how do you evaluate this regulatory framework from the FSC or MA altogether? Or do you anticipate any new regimes emerging soon, perhaps around like OTC trading and all that? Would you like to share your point of view on this?
Sure. Well, the latest one on staking is actually a very I mean, from an investor protection perspective, or from a user perspective, is quite a good one. It enables sort of more of the Web3 ecosystem to be translated into something that investors can enjoy even through the regulated crypto ecosystems like OSL. But it's also potentially a bit more open-ended. So yes, the first batch of staking services we're seeing on the market are going to be ETH. So ETH staking, for example, being provided to the ETH ETFs that are listed in Hong Kong. But equally, we can provide the same services, the same staking services to individual investors. And the guidance issued by the SFC also permits us to provide the service to retail investors. Obviously, there will be a lot of compliance obligations that we're expected to meet. But we think these are also good news for the investors, because if an investor chooses to enjoy staking services through a Hong Kong platform, the same custody, the same safekeeping, the same client asset protections will still continue. So the clients are not putting their assets into a different risk environment just because they want to enjoy staking benefits. Well, I guess it's the risks and benefits. So we do have to look at both sides of the equation. But more importantly, if you compare that situation, for example, to the US, where the legal certainties around the legality of staking services are still continuing to be a bit more vague and gray. So from an investor perspective, that's not what you want. I mean, if I'm a retail investor or a professional investor, you just want to focus on want to focus on the risk and benefits of doing your investment, not on the legal uncertainties. And so I think the biggest takeaway from the Hong Kong situation is the extent of legal certainty that the investors can actually get a piece of mind from. So once you've got legal certainty, then you can focus on the more important task at hand, which is the risk rewards of staking, and not worry about the sort of more technical questions about legal certainty. And same thing with things like cybersecurity protections. How are the custodians maintaining control over assets? All of these things, there's no guesswork in the Hong Kong framework. These are all actually publicly, they are actually published in a guidelines that anyone can download to look at what are the expectations on the service providers when it comes to protecting client assets. These are all public information. So I think it's a good framework, and also because it's open-ended. I think it's going to be open to the platforms to explore other suitable proof of stake assets that potentially we may be able to roll out to the market in the future beyond ETH.
Thank you, Gary. I would like to further ask, like, what kind of investor can benefit under this new staking guideline? Would normal retail investor be like taking advantage of this, or only professional or institutional investors can benefit from the current staking guideline from FSC?
Well, the SFC does permit service providers like OSL to provide that service to retail and PI investors. I guess with the current state of ETH, the minimum entry size of 32 ETH may potentially raise the barrier to entry. But other than that, really, any investors can choose to instruct us to stake their ETH assets so that they can actually start benefiting from the potential rewards that the Ethereum blockchain provides for staking arrangements. Obviously, like any other arrangements, there are also risks. And the current state of the Ethereum blockchain is that when you stake your assets, one of the so-called risks or the costs of staking the assets is that the assets will become illiquid. But it's really up to the investors to gauge whether the risks returns are appropriate. And I guess if we look across the investor landscape, for investors who are natural long asset, so for example, and the ETFs is actually almost a perfect example. The spot crypto ETFs are naturally long players in the asset, and they what they hold, they tend to not dynamically trade as well, which means that what they hold statically is almost an ideal portfolio for allocating to staking to improve returns. Similarly, a lot of crypto natives or sort of long-term crypto, I guess investors who hold a long-term view on the crypto landscape, they are natural long players. They may not actively trade their portfolio because they take a very long view. The ability for them to generate yield on a crypto asset is really an excellent development. And if we compare that against the TradFi or the cash landscape, if you're long cash, it's very easy for you to generate some yield through to generate passive and defensive yield with limited risk. The ability to start rolling that out for crypto investors with their crypto wealth, I think is an excellent development.
Thank you, Gary, for breaking all this down in very easy to understand languages. The next few questions will be for Hoy, our product director. And Hoy, I know the OSL and Kiln collaboration has been a passion project for you, and you have poured a lot of effort into bringing it to life. Could you share how long you have been working on it, and what's the initial idea or collaboration discussions with Kiln at the beginning?
Oh, thanks, Lucy, for the question. So, I would say we actually engaged with SFC to talk about staking like long time back, maybe even before I joined. But for my actual involvement and engagement is, I think it's from roughly November last year. I mean, Gary can correct me if I'm wrong. So we have been working closely with the regulators in Hong Kong about this, and about understanding the concern and also the demand and the view from Hong Kong, and hence I've chosen a field service provider for assessment. And finally, I've decided to go ahead to work with Colin on the staking front. And I think it's a two-way process. It's a two-way decision. It's not just OSL us choosing Colin as service provider, but also Colin actively involved in the projects and working with us to resolve concerns from the investor and regulators. And that's, I think, the main reason for having all this happening.
I would like to continue on this. And why did OSL choose Kiln as a staking partner? Like, what makes Kiln so special? Would love to have your point of view.
Okay. I think it could be like an advertisement time for Colin later. Yeah, but I will speak from OSL perspective. First, when we are choosing like a particular vendor or on the new innovations or technology, so of course we are looking at the reputations of the company, the history of the company, and also their track record in the industry. So Colin has been doing great in providing transparent information about the performance, the track record, and how they've been doing or reacting into different incident in the ecosystem. They are also very close with a lot of blockchain foundation, which can help OSL to work closer and take a closer look to what's happening. Not to mention, but like I can't skip the important information. Like Colin themselves has been a major industry player in the staking space, and they have like a long history in this area. Yeah, I think all this adding up together became the reason that OSL decided to partner with Colin on the second part.
I thought you were gonna say at least because you like me, Hoy. So I'm a bit disappointed. All the rest is correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, why didn't you spend like a few time to talk about like why you think like we should have chosen you, right? We've spent a long time discussing the long time back, like during November or like December last year. And even when we are talking together with the regulators on this, like we have actually spent a lot of time in explaining like why OSL would choose you. Why don't you speak a bit about like from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I can't look into your head or decision process, but I think at Kiln when we work with partners, we do that very, let's say, faithfully, diligently. So every time Hoy came with another list of questions, whether it was from investors, from institutions that they work with, from SFC, we took those questions very seriously. We tried our best to answer them in very, very, very detailed way, right? Because you're working with a regulator, and I think if you just give superficial answers or you don't elaborate further on them, it's probably not going to help your case. It might do the opposite. So I think we try to be as detailed and responsive as possible. And then, yeah, we feel very comfortable with our tech, in our performance, in the way we run validators, the experience we have on different protocols, not just Ethereum. Yes, we are by far the biggest Ethereum validator company in the world, but we also do a lot of other stuff. And I think that broad experience makes us, in general, more knowledgeable and capable of handling any type of situation. And then I'm thinking that, but correct me if I'm wrong here, that you probably had some kind of scoring matrix, Hoy, where you looked at things like, indeed, like track record, reputation, depth of answers, speed of response. Do they have local people in the area, in the region to help? What's their performance track record? Do they have insurance? Do they have a big enough balance sheet to absorb any potential mishaps, etc.? So I think it's a combination of just speed and depth of delivery, and then everything that is accumulated and track record over the years.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, maybe I can throw in a word or two as well. I mean, even learning how to benchmark staking service providers or validators was sort of a new skill that we sort of acquired in the process. And I think what was quite educational for us is also that when we look at something like staking, actually a lot of the benchmarking information, provided we knew where to look, was actually publicly verifiable or publicly available. So, for example, the blockchain being what it is, things like performance history, slashing history were actually independently verifiable, and so with a good quality service provider like Kiln, a lot of the information effectively was once we learned where to look was quite easy to verify. And so ultimately the decision on our part was to make sure that by the time we hit the market with a product, that it is actually a good product. And also for the investors who know where to look, it's not just us saying it, it's them being able to independently verify. And I think that's what made that these are some of the things that made it such an important decision, and I think what makes our product offering a powerful one for a lot of investors on the market. It's the fact that they will be able to see for themselves.
Thanks for everyone's input. So, Hoi, going back to you, I would like to understand what are the key milestones or steps involved in launching a collaboration project like this from concept to go live, and what does that journey typically look like? And the same question will go to Colin later. I want to hear both sides of the story.
Sure. I mean, for me, like as a product guy, it all starts from like who is our client, what is the pain point for the client, what can we do to better serve them. So it all starts from there. So more like a traditional way of doing product development. So our key customers is institutions or more like public facing. How can we like introduce staking to Hong Kong, and from which channel can we do it? It all kinds of start from there, and then slowly we explore different channels like either ETF or like other private fund. And then we slowly narrow down the scope and decided on, okay, that's how we do it. We work with the regulators. And then that becomes like a major milestone, because to go for the regulators, we have a lot of preparations work to be that has to be done. And then we have to go for like the vendors or the partnerships. And then we slowly talk to different stakeholders in the entire project to do assessment on the feasibility, not just technically in terms of infrastructure or just regulators, but also commercially, it has to make sense for everyone. And finally, we have decided to go ahead and push forward on this. So that's how roughly the journey looked like. And we are talking about all this spanning for more than 6 months. So yeah, it's a long journey.
Oh, what about on your side, Colin?
Maybe, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Hoi, did you have something else to add?
No, I'm pretty much asking Colin the same question, like how does he feel about
Cool.
this?
Yeah, very same feeling. And I think what is nice about this partnership is people see the headlines right now and they think, oh, this is so cool, and wow, nicely done. They typically don't see the 6 to 9 months prior, right, where initially it was evaluating providers, it's us providing information, it's OSL going back and forth with SFC, it's us going together to the SFC. It's answering 1,000,001 questions on DDQ questionnaires. It's then drawing flowcharts. It's involving 2, 3 partners, 3 different tech stacks. It's testing the flow. It's doing that in testnet, in mainnet. So yeah, those are all the things that people don't see in the backend, but that's definitely where you see and feel the value. And so this has actually been a really cool process, and I want to give kudos to OSL as being really great partners to work with. This has been like a challenging and fun journey so far, and I think if we keep going and growing in this same direction with this momentum, there's a lot more things we can do and deliver for OSL, its clients, and the ecosystem.
Thank you, Colin. And the next question still go back to you, Hoi. What sets the OSL product, the staking product, apart from the competition? Where do you see our biggest edge in terms of innovation and client value?
Thanks. I think it will take some time for me to digest. It's a big question. Like, so So what set us apart from the other competitors is, I would say staking is one of the product that we are pushing recently. But in terms of the innovation part, actually we have been in the forefront of leading in terms of introducing different Web3 ecosystem players into Hong Kong by closely collaborating with them and integrating them into the Hong Kong financial system, or like just even our own exchange platform. And this sets us apart from the rest of the competitors because first, we are using a very proactive approach in talking to different ecosystem players, like not just by offering staking, we talk to Colin, but we are also closely looking into how the foundations get involved in this and how would they react to our feedback. So we're looking into this very seriously instead of just like, oh, we want to offer a product and we find a vendor and that's it. So we are looking at it holistically in pushing forward staking and how we can collaborate with different foundations and how we can do something more in the future. Instead of just staking, can we explore other partnerships? So that's how we are seeing it. Like previously, we have just helped China AMC to distribute the tokenization money market fund. So that's just the beginning of how we get involved in the RWA more proactively. And now we're also looking closely of issuing more tokens with other issuers or financial institutions. The same for staking, like ETH is just the beginning of offering staking in Hong Kong. We're definitely looking towards Solana or even more tokens, which may come to have demand and approved by SFC, that we can introduce all them to Hong Kong investors. And I think that's our biggest value, as in we are moving very quickly and proactively in introducing different Web3 ecosystem into Hong Kong by pushing forward the Hong Kong government regime on Web3 adoptions.
Thank you for your breakdown, Hoi. And I noticed a lot of platforms like He or Coinbase or Binance, they do the staking on their own platform. And how does working with a partner like Kiln different than the platform doing staking just by themselves? Maybe this question I can ask Colin first, and then I will ask the OSL team. Colin, would you mind to share your point of view on this?
Yeah, I think it's important for anyone who engages in staking to understand that there's different ways different entities package a staking offering, and not all staking offerings are actual staking offerings. So I think as a consumer, even as an institution, you need to be wary of the blueprint or the fine print of what you're doing and what you're staking where. Some exchanges, for example, they will label something a staking service, but it's not real on-chain staking. It might be lending and borrowing, might be market making, might just give you a certain yield for you to lock up your token. So that in the pure way of it is not considered staking, but they might label it that way. A correcter way would to say that it's lending or it's a certain earn product, but not a staking product. What we have built here together with OSL is pure native on-chain staking, right? So the biggest counterparty here is just the protocol itself, for example, the Ethereum protocol, and then you rely on a service provider like Kiln to stake on your behalf. But there's no lending and borrowing, there's no intermediaries, there's no market making, etc. So it's a pure on-chain traceable transaction that is just staking and unstaking. So there's no other actions being done, and so that is staking in its purest form, and that can be very different from what you see on centralized exchanges, for example. Can be very different from what you're seeing in lending and borrowing protocols. So it's important to make that distinction. And this native staking is more suited for like the ones that just want the actual native and pure yield of staking, and that is what Kiln and OSL is offering here for institutions and other investors.
Thank you so much, Colin. Gary, do you have extra points to add on this question?
Colin's point there is a very good one. So the sort of pure native staking, I think one of the key features is, unlike some of the more synthesized offerings on the market, that there is no sort of sharing of risk or rewards with other investors, and that's something that we have built quite intentionally. So each investor who may decide to stake their assets, they will get their own risks and rewards. There will be no pooling, there's no averaging, there's no sharing. Obviously it has its pros and cons as well. But certainly from a security and transparency perspective, we believe that aspect is also an attractive feature for a lot of investors who are purely just looking at native staking, and they don't want to assume any other risks within the arrangement.
Thank you, Gary. Looking ahead, and I would like to ask all our guests the last question: what do you see as the next big development for staking, both here in Asia and globally? Maybe we'll start with Hoi.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, staking in Hong Kong, what we are talking about, especially from OSL perspective, we are offering the enterprise-grade staking to institutions. And looking closer to other regions, for example, in Japan, they actually have been offering staking on the exchange, but more from an earned product perspective, which is commingling the current asset into one big pool, and is very different from the Hong Kong like SFC regime. And I see the next big developments in staking in Asia is Solana. In particular, there's a strong demand of this token in Hong Kong. The rate is more attractive as compared to Ethereum. And also in terms of the security or the ownership of the token, there's less ambiguity when it comes to the ownership of the token when it's being staked. Yeah, I do think like the Solana staking is the next big thing in Hong Kong and Asia, and also potentially globally.
And Colin, do you have extra points to add on this question?
No, I think that that covered it nicely.
And Gary, do you have extra points to add on this? How do you see the future of staking in both Asia and globally?
I think I definitely agree with what Hoi said. I think a lot, if there are a few things we've learned in the last sort of 6 years in this space, is when people are doing something for the first time, part of the difficulty is not being able to define sort of suitable frames of reference for people to understand, how to understand, how to sort of put a novel phenomenon into sort of categories that we are used to dealing with, and that's how sort of legal systems operate, and that's how regulators and regulatory systems operate. So typically what happens is once you've done it for the first time, then it becomes much easier after that. So I think we're definitely quite excited to be able to apply the same lenses, the same formula to other assets, other proof of stake assets that are suitable. If we sort of look at it at a more general level, as I said, this innovation is really directly we think it is directly leading to what we hope to be a sort of breakthrough for the Ether ETF space. And we do think we are introducing sort of a best of Web3 ecosystem players into the Hong Kong regulatory landscape as well through our collaboration with Kiln. And we will continue to sort of integrate sort of the top Web3 ideas and players into the Hong Kong landscape for Hong Kong investors to reap more of the benefit of Web3 innovations. And to do it with the same degree of certainty and security is just something that we are very proud of.
Yeah, and maybe indeed to add to that, as a broader learning here, it's like really cool to see that Hong Kong is taking the lead here, allowing and regulating forward instead of reactive or backward. So I think that's something that OSL in particular can be very proud of, right? Because you've been doing pioneering work. And it's going to be a step forward for Hong Kong as a city, for Hong Kong as a digital hub, but then also for the broader region. I'm sure, and we're already seeing ripple effects of how this probably influences places like Singapore, Tokyo, Australia, and further down the region to do something similar, or at least give this more consideration. Working very closely with our legal team, they're also speaking to the likes of the European Commission, the SEC in the United States, the JFSA, etc. So yes, this is a pivotal time, and it's nice to see Hong Kong leading and being able to be involved as Kiln and OSL in this regulatory journey that digital assets and in specific crypto staking is on.
Wow, thank you, Colin. I think that's a very nice wrap up of our AMA. And thank you, Hoy, Colin, and Gary for your participation. From product innovation to trusted service providers and a progressive regulatory framework, all the right pieces are falling into place. Hong Kong isn't just participating in the future of crypto, it's actively building it, one block at a time. At OSL, we are proud to play a pivotal role in connecting global Web3 ecosystem leaders with Hong Kong's regulated financial infrastructure, driving institutional adoption and shaping a truly interconnected digital asset future. A heartfelt thank you for our strategic partner, Kim, for being on this journey with us, and to our incredible guests for sharing such valuable insights today. If you found this section as inspiring as we did, follow osl.com and Keen for the latest updates and stay connected with our speakers on LinkedIn and X. Let's keep building the finance future together. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice weekend.